Clarence Thomas is a black nationalist. Yes, I'm serious.
Wait a minute.
Let me explain. According to Stanford University, black nationalism can be boiled down to three main tenets: black economic self-sufficiency, black pride, and black separatism. And Corey Robin argues in his book, The Enigma of Clarence Thomas, that Thomas hits all three. Kind of. I've poured over hours of footage from Clarence Thomas's life, interviews and speeches. I disagree with Clarence Thomas on basically everything, but I wanted to dig into his ideas in order to critique them even better, and what I found was fascinating. Buckle up, we're diving deep. Imagine black nationalism as a graph. In one direction, you have the conservative versus liberal spectrum. In the other direction, you have the individualist versus collectivist spectrum. This is for the nerds, but I think that Clarence Thomas would land very quietly right here. A conservative, individualistic black nationalist. And I do mean very quietly. He once went 10 years without asking a question from the bench. But make no mistake, Clarence Thomas has said a lot over the years, especially about race. Clarence Thomas averages more than 30 speaking engagements per year, and in nearly all of them, he makes some commentary on race.
I thought it was important for someone to assert the right to, particularly among blacks, the right to think for themselves.
But to really understand him, you only need to listen to this one speech. It's a speech he gave in Memphis, Tennessee, to a room full of black lawyers in 1998.
How does one introduce a person who is so well known that virtually everyone in this audience has an impression of him?
Let me set the scene. We're only a few years past his confirmation to the Supreme Court, where he was accused of sexually assaulting a black woman, Anita Hill. On top of that, black people feel like he is an enemy of progress. So the room is tense. Some of the black lawyers in the room don't even feel like he should be there. They see him as a person who has completely turned his back on black America.
I have come to say, isn't it time to realize that being angry with me solves no problems?
But Clarence Thomas sees this moment as an opportunity to outline his philosophies on race, particularly his ideas about black people and black progress. And if you're listening closely, you can hear these themes from black power leaders of the past. He starts by trying to level with the audience, talking about his time as a leftist black radical during the 1960s.
As I have suggested, I have been there. The frustrations with the so-called system, the subtle and not so subtle bigotry and animus toward members of my race made radicals and nationalists of many of us.
That the cry of black power is at bottom a reaction to the reluctance of white power to make the kind of changes necessary.
He muses about black dignity.
Any effort, policy, or program that has as a prerequisite the acceptance of the notion that blacks are inferior is a non-starter with me.
We declare our right on this earth to be a man, to be a human being, to be respected as a human being, to be given the rights of a human being.
I do not believe that kneeling is a position of strength.
I must be respected. I must be protected. I am somebody.
Nor do I believe that begging is an effective tactic,
which we intend to bring into existence by any means necessary.
And just a few years before this speech, Clarence Thomas wrote a judicial opinion that all but argued for black separatism. What I'm saying is that the foundation for a kind of black power nationalism is there. The problem is where Clarence Thomas lands, his conclusions. He's all for black self-sufficiency, black institutions, black self-defense. But he is also profoundly suspicious of white people's intentions, particularly white liberals. He despises the lofty promises of racial progress that don't yield adequate results.
The inverse relationship between the bold promises and the effectiveness of the proposed solutions, the frustrations with the so-called system.
Which is extremely relatable. He's been disillusioned by the trauma of Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination.
30 years ago, we all focused intently on this city as the trauma of Dr. King's death first exploded, then sank into our lives. The rush of hopelessness and isolation was immediate and overwhelming.
Whatever hope he had in white liberals helping black people, that event killed it.
It was this event that shattered my faith in my religion and my country. I had accepted the loneliness that came with being the integrator, the first and the only. But this event, this trauma, I could not take. especially when one of my fellow seminarians, not knowing that I was standing behind him, declared that he hoped the SOB died.
But unlike the leftist black nationalists that Clarence Thomas once admired, his black nationalism diverges down a pathway of far right-wing conservatism. Black nationalist heroes like Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey and Kwame Ture all saw black solidarity as a fundamental part of their agenda for black people. They believed that black folks had to come together, had to work together, achieve our own collective freedom for ourselves. I think they land here on our chart. But Clarence Thomas isn't interested in the collective, the group. He's only interested in the individual now. He's given up on collective black movements.
I am confident that the individual approach, not the group approach, is a better, more acceptable, more supportable, and less dangerous one.
I think his words here are telling.
Better, more acceptable.
More acceptable for whom?
More supportable.
And whose support are we wanting more of?
And less dangerous.
Black solidarity has proven to be dangerous before, but only because white people felt threatened by black self-sufficiency. And so is he suggesting that we should just give in? Should we just abandon our own collective good? I think that's the major hole in his ideology. I think his journey is really common and relatable. Trauma and disillusionment are real. I can only imagine how painful it was for people like him to live through the assassination of MLK. But listening to his speech, I think he could stand to go back and listen to the words of King again. Justice Thomas wants to live in a world where black people are fully self-sufficient and can pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. But Dr. King had something to say about exactly that in the last interview he gave before his assassination.
And I believe we ought to do all we can and seek to lift ourselves by our own bootstraps. But it's a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And many Negroes, by the thousands and millions, have been left bootless as a result of all of these years of oppression and as a result of a society that deliberately made his color a stigma and something worthless and degrading.
Okay, that's it for this one. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, consider dropping a like, consider subscribing. Here at Subtext, we are looking beneath the surface, right? There's context, there's some pretext, there's some subtext. We're looking into those things, particularly around culture. I had a lot of fun researching for this video. Of course, drop down in the comments, let us know what you think, and let us know other topics that we should cover. I think that's it. See you in the next one. Peace.